Welcome to the Fellowship of the Script, a podcast where we dive deep into the craft, struggles, and stories of filmmaking. I'm your host, Eric Bowder.
And I'm your other host, Ben Escobar.
Whether you're just starting out or you've been in the industry for years, this is the place for real talk about the art and business of film. Today's topic is about how to develop a movie idea from that first spark of inspiration to something you can actually write, pitch, or produce.
Yeah, so this is about if you've ever had an idea stuck in your head and didn't know what to do next, this episode is for you. I know there's a lot of people like that. I think every human being in the world experiences that. And it's fun to talk about, and it's good to talk about. So we're gonna do
Yeah,
it.
we're gonna tell you how to do it. I've been there. I know that when I first thought about getting into filmmaking, I had a ton of ideas that I jotted down in notebooks without the intention of ever acting upon them because I just didn't even know where to start. So
Mm.
this is going to be fun. But before we get into why we chose this topic, if you're watching or listening on Spotify, please follow us so you get notified every time we drop a new episode.
Yes, please. That actually helps our podcast get recommended to a lot of new people. So please always do that. Thank you.
We would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, as we were starting to get into, every filmmaker has that one moment where a story just hits you. Sometimes it's a random shower thought, sometimes it's inspired by something you actually lived through. But turning that idea into a film is where most people get stuck.
Yeah. I think anyone can kind of remember their first big movie idea. You probably had it way back when you were like, I don't know, a toddler, like 5, 6. As soon as you saw your first movie or heard your first story, you probably, if it really like compelled you enough, you probably were curious to say like, oh, wow, I have this incredible concept and maybe you'll try to write it later on, or maybe you'll just like really take the time to like daydream the hell out of it. Um, but it's often tough to figure out, what the story is about. But I think that's the hardest part that, is what makes, great filmmaking or great storytelling great, is turning that cool concept into something that's actually emotionally grounded and meaningful. And it's worth taking the shot at that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, I guess, underestimate their ability to actually figure out that process and do it. It does involve a lot of research, thinking about the idea, reflecting on how it makes you feel, how you want it to make other people feel, and then even maybe, going as far as testing it, telling your friends about it, seeing if it sounds like a good idea. I don't know if you've ever done that before, Ben. You're like, "Hey, I got an idea, man. What do you think about this?" I do it
Yeah,
all the time.
definitely. And you also got to make sure like who you're, telling that to and asking that is not a yes man. Cause I've had that in film school early on. I would say these really wacky ideas and I should do these like overly ambitious ideas. And I had a lot of nice friends. And so they would often encourage me and I would do it. And, I'm glad I did it more or less. Those were lessons learned. But yeah, I think it's worth talking about like how to find the idea that's worth trying objectively and subjectively. Also, finding what's unique, what's cinematic and more than anything else, like making it personal enough to yourself and kind of your voice and, your truth in life.
Yeah, so let's talk about finding that seed, that first spark that turns into a full-fleshed idea. Sometimes it's a character, or it's a what if scenario, or maybe there's a feeling that you've experienced and you want to recreate that, but in a storytelling way.
Definitely. I mean, I think there's something you should look at and be aware of in your life is like, what is an emotional trigger for you? Something that's like a sort of a means to an end to make you feel a certain way, perhaps towards the extreme. So something that makes you angry, sad, inspired, extremely happy, and discuss with yourself why is that. And I think if you don't even have the answer for that out the gate, sort of the story fuel is trying to find that answer for yourself. And that's why a lot of artists make or do and make what they do is sort of this soul searching actively, saying things out loud that they're too afraid to do. That's certainly how it is for me. And I think it's a strength, even though it's uncomfortable, it is a strength and you should embrace it. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that that's a part of art is being vulnerable creatively. I'm sure there's a ton of people who had great ideas, but because they never acted on them, we never got to experience those, and that's a shame. So, you know, be kind to yourself at the beginning of this process. Don't shoot down every idea because you can talk yourself into thinking that an idea is bad because you're afraid to take a chance on it. Um, yeah, I'm sure that's something's Ben and I have both experienced. But I've been passed the same advice that I'm going to pass along here, and that's to try to come up with an idea or a story or tell a story that nobody else could because it's that special and unique to you. What is your lens? What is your perspective on something? It could be, and I've been inspired this way. I watch a movie and then there's a scene and there's a really cool idea, and I'm like, hey, I know about that thing. You could like make a whole movie about this thing, and then having that like actual real world experience makes it unique because I'm telling it through my lens and from my experience that most people don't have. That's why I've chosen to write a film about the Coast Guard, because I think that a lot of people don't know a lot about that world. And so to try and tell a story that's from that world that most people don't even know what the Coast Guard does. It's a whole can of worms to open up, and yeah, try to find that for yourself.
I think it's super important, and you shouldn't be afraid of it too. It kind of goes into like if you want to know where to start, right when you have that idea that you could do, um, you should write it down in a anywhere you could, and there is like a lot of different discussions we could have about outlining. I'll kind of speak from my experience. Whenever I come up with an idea for a movie, it comes from a place of a question or like a desire for something. Either it's I wish they would make this kind of movie, I would want to see this kind of movie, or I feel like this subject matter or this feeling exactly was discussed in a movie. And I outline and I kind of write my ideas down like a diary because to me, this doesn't have to apply to everybody. I feel like if I'm able to capture that first spark and like really try to keep this lightning in a bottle of sorts and never let it go of this is why I want to make this movie. This is why I want to put the time into drafting this 100+ page screenplay, pitching it out and, defend and put my reputation on the line and like, tell people this is who I am, this is what I want to do. Like it's got to be a great idea. And that you have a great idea when, you can't hold your tongue about that fucking thing and you got to like
Yeah,
do something about it. So, in my opinion, when you're first writing that down, capture that. Don't just say like good movie idea about dragons. Like fucking talk about the dragons, man. Say why you love the dragons and how it breathes fire and how you like it's so cool because the fire can look one way or the other. You could fly the dragon, you could train the dragon, you could figure out how to train your dragon. I mean,
okay.
anyway.
No, I mean, I think another way to put it, what Ben's trying to say is when an idea gets a hook in you, write that hook down. What is it that's causing it to hook you? Because that's probably what's going to hook the audience. And it doesn't matter how silly it sounds at first, it's ideas are meant to be molded, stretched, squished into a ball and turned into something else. I don't think there's any such thing as bad ideas. Some ideas just need more time in the oven. I
Agreed.
have a ton of ideas written down, and it's something as simple as, let's say you want to write a horror movie. What scares you? Right? I hate snakes. So if somebody was like, "Hey, you need to write like a movie that's about like some radioactive creature," first thing that comes to my mind is snakes. Giant
Yeah.
snakes. Ben and I have talked about developing an idea in the past about that, and we both talked about how I was afraid of snakes. That was
Yeah.
something that really stood out to me. Um,
Who
that
isn't,
real
man?
world fear.
Yeah, I bet what's fun about that is the passion that comes from that. Even if it's like the passion about talking about your greatest fear, like and getting excited about to say how afraid of snakes you are. It's contagious, and that's the thing you should take away more than anything else when you're writing that first idea down. Is that If you cannot capture your passion and get unlimited fuel out of that passion, not only for yourself but for other people, like it's not going to happen, because like passion is truly the most valuable thing you could make in the process, because the world lacks passion, man. The world, everybody wishes they experienced the thrill and really the high of having a brilliant idea and hearing it. And if you've got it, like, don't shut up about it, because other people who will see that will not shut up about it either, until you're multiplying millions upon millions of, people who want to collaborate, and then also dollars, and then whatever. But
Yeah,
when you,
passion. I think if you use passion as your fuel, that can only get you to good places. Yeah, no, definitely. If you can't explain your movie idea in one or two sentences, then maybe think about it a little bit more. If you can't even do that, you might have a hard time turning that into a script. So once you find that right idea, you start to develop it. And do you want to talk about taking an idea and turning it into a story?
sure, yeah, I think the first step with that is also acknowledging that it's okay to not be a writer. I think it's okay to have ideas. Everybody in the world will have ideas, but a small fraction of that will be people that are actually writers that can, write that down and flesh it out. And it's worth testing yourself and seeing, honestly, like, can I do this? Am I enjoying this? Because it's not, always the most fun thing. But let's say you are the type to want to, like, buckle down and do it. Let's talk about how it becomes a story, I guess. Ask yourself general things. Who is the protagonist? Meaning, like, who's the main character? Who are we watching? Who are we rooting for? What do they want? What is standing in their way? What are the main obstacles? And what is at stake if they fail? A simple thing I learned in film school is the definition of what a story was, which is a hero's struggle against an obstacle to reach a goal. And I think that's pretty true. Uh, but also, I'd say, like, story is empathy, or a shortcut to feeling a feeling that you wouldn't naturally feel. There's other ways to put it, but
I agree.
yeah, think about the stakes. Like, there's Derek tells me ideas all the time where he just sets it up very naturally. It's second nature for him. He says, so there's this guy and he's like trying to do this, but then there's this other thing that's going to happen. And if that other thing happens, this guy's fucked, because there's this other thing. Sorry. I'm trying
No,
to think
no,
of like,
you're like, oh, dude,
yeah,
yeah,
I don't, yeah, there's many a moment like that. And it's just like, we're cavemen at the end of the day. Like, we're just like cavemen around a fire
yeah.
that like hear the
Found
thing,
on
and
the
like,
wall, being like, "Do you get it?"
yeah, it like never gets old. The hero struggle, obstacle, redemption, winning, it's in our nature. So
Yeah, I mean, you can take your favorite movies and break them down to that same kind of plot. They just kind of do it in different ways, and they play with the style and all of that. But there's also movies that break that mold, but they still have to be an idea that gets developed into a story, and then go from there. It's just you know shaping it. That's where you get to make it your own and nobody else's. But before you get there, you got to think about what drives your story. Uh, Stories are conflict at the end of the day, right? I mean, think of any movie, and there's always some conflict, or else it's boring if people don't watch it. Like it's pretty simple. I mean, people will talk about it all the time. Like pacing issues, and it's like there was no conflict, in this huge section. Like nothing interesting happened. So always bring it back to conflict. I think that's a good guiding light. You might even find that your idea doesn't work as a feature, and it could be a different story. You can make it a short film. You can make it a TV pilot. You can make it a play. I've never done that, but everything. That's another way to look at it. Another lens. What would it look like as a different kind of project? Don't feel like you have to make it a movie or it has to be a short film. If you're like, no, this should be a whole movie, then there's different ways to approach that. Do you want to make a proof of concept? You want to just go for it and shoot the movie? I mean, these are all questions that you have to ask yourself when you're developing the idea, you know?
it's another thing that a lot of people skip, I think, once you've kind of decided what your movie is, in any way, shape, or form, is research, which I think is very important. If you're going to make a
My favorite
movie about,
part.
yeah, it's
I
fun.
love research.
There's people who say they want to make a movie really badly, and like they try to like do it with any means they have. And let's say you're trying to force it down to like a one location thing. If you're trying to force it down to a one location thing, I've heard many a first feature is about someone on house arrest, but it's usually directed by people who have never been on house arrest. And so you got to like know what that's like to, have the ankle bracelet and, give the reason naturally of why we can't leave the house or something like that. And what that's going to be like. And, the man in the room going crazy by himself thing is really fun and good. Um, but it's good to research that. Additionally, if you're not doing that, I think, especially if you're not doing something like historical or like something that really requires like a lot of like actual like open up a textbook kind of research or open up Wikipedia, is research on yourself. Meaning like understand why the hell this thing makes you feel the way you feel, because that's going to teach you about your protagonist, especially if you're like really relating to it. It's also going to teach you about you and your writing process and like how you're going to get to that place. Something I do that is a little controversial is I keep a lot of things and artifacts from my exes because I find myself writing a lot of like, coming of age dramas about relationships and high school shit. I have notes from my fucking first girlfriend in high school, who was a pretty crazy person, but
Uh,
was I have notes that inspire me and put me back in that place of like, oh, that was the mindset I was going through as this delusional little like 17-year-old kid, and is actually heavily inspired the current project I'm working on, the video game, which is about a relationship and a couple that stayed together since high school. And I picked that back up no matter how weird that was, and I did research on myself, and it informed how I write the character in my game better. It informed how I write the protagonist better, who's like loosely based on me, loosely kind of not. And I don't know. Don't be afraid. I'm just always one to get awkward, and I embrace the awkward. I acknowledge it's weird as fuck that I keep that stuff, but I don't know. It does something for me creatively, and so that's what it's around for. I don't know.
yeah, no, I mean, it's very common to hear the advice, write what you know, but I don't think you should limit yourself to that. I think that it goes as far as your research takes you. If you're going to write a movie about a cop, I think ride-alongs are free. Like, go ride with a cop, get that experience, see what it's actually like, because it'll make your story unique. Because that's the difference between you and somebody who's not willing to do the research. You're going to write a better story because it feels real. I like grounded stuff too. So when people get the details right, I remember that movie because I'm like, look, somebody did their research. It wasn't just thrown together because it sounded cool. Because you can make any idea sound cool, but if it doesn't have that real world depth to it or that real world influence, let's say, I don't know, you do Uber driving, but you're writing a movie about an Uber driver in like, the year 2070. It's going to be a little different, but that real world of experience and knowing what it's like to be an Uber driver is still going to make it more authentic, even though it doesn't take place, now and everything's different. And it's all futuristic, yada yada yada. You can see what I'm saying if you get what I'm saying, Ben.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course, of course.
there's
I
all
mean,
different forms of research.
you want to like learn something too out of like what you're
Yeah,
watching, and then good research leads to that for other people. So
watch movies related to what you're writing or developing. And
definitely,
that's
yeah,
I hear some people say they're afraid to do that because they're worried it'll influence them too much. But I find that it helps me make sure I don't accidentally use an idea too similar, and then it feels like I'm just copying that thing from a movie that I didn't watch because I didn't know somebody already did that. Um, I mean, you can also, I think you can get stuck in this phase. There is a certain point where it's time to make the leap, and move on to expanding the world and the characters and fleshing it out so that you can make your way to your first outline. But before we get into that, and also before I start the ad break, same thing we said about pitching your idea to friends to see if it sounds cool. Now that you've started to develop it, start pitching it again. But hey, you remember that idea I had? Remember I said you didn't like this? Well, I changed this, and now there's all these other things going on. What do you think? Does that sound better? And if they say, it still doesn't sound that cool, that's still feedback you can take and learn from and develop it further. It's,
definitely.
just like anything else we've talked about, trial and error. Don't give up just because, And also don't give up because one friend out of like your 10 friends says it's a terrible idea. You can't please everybody. But anyways, on to our ad break, unless you got
Yeah.
anything to say.
Well, I was gonna say there's always that advice, and I think Save the Cat or one of those fucking screenwriting books says like you should go to a coffee shop and ask people in line about their thoughts on your idea. I don't personally agree with that. That said, I don't agree with it in the context of me living in LA. I think like doing that elsewhere maybe is a little like, oh, that's funny, that's interesting, and if you could really pull it off and be a talkative person, go for it. I mean,
If I did that in
yeah.
Albuquerque, I might get shot. So I'm kidding.
Jesus Christ.
Somebody's gonna steal my car. Anyways, on to the ad break, guys. Wherever you're listening or watching, be sure to subscribe, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, and subscribe to the other ones. Why not? Support us everywhere. You can also follow us on our socials if you want to see what else we're doing outside the podcast, or you want to see, real world updates and stuff. As Ben and I are experiencing life, we're posting about it on our stories and stuff. So you can follow me at Danny Dorito23. Ben goes
I'm
by.
at Real Ben Escobar or at Ginny Boy Games.
We also have a free Discord. If you want to come chat with us or hang out with some other people who love movies and other filmmakers. We also do giveaways. I'm gonna get into giveaways more here in a second because it's that time of the month. Uh, if you do join our Discord, again, it's free, but don't bring drama. Don't go in there and start pissing people off because you're just gonna get banned or kicked or it's a whole thing we don't want to go through. But you're more than welcome to come hang out if you're cool. All right. Um, Giveaways. So I do special giveaways through the Discord that are open to everybody. You don't have to be subscribed to the Patreon. You just have to be in the Discord for certain milestones. I give away surprise things like G Fuel sample packets, maybe a shaker, things like that. I got a pair of headphones. So I'm waiting for the right milestone to do it, but they're like nice. What is the? I can't remember. HyperX. That's what it is. It's like a nice HyperX headset that works for any console or PC, anything you want, your phone, all of it. But different milestones, like 250 YouTube subs. Last I checked, we're around 135, I think. So we're getting there. 10 Spotify ratings. I think we're like one away. 10 Apple podcast reviews. Maybe when we hit 250 Discord members, you get the point. I'm looking to give away stuff. So come support us, join the Discord, and you'll get access to those giveaways. But if you want to go above and beyond and maybe even get involved as a producer, we have a Patreon where you can subscribe for as little as $1. We just did our hangout the other day. It was a lot of fun. Just chatted with a couple of people in the Discord for an hour, talked about movies and whatever else was going on in life. We also have a film fellowship that we do every first Saturday of the month where we talk about developing our ideas like we're talking about in this podcast
Mhm.
episode. You want to come develop it with us and tell us your ideas and we'll give you real world feedback and help you take it to that next step. Um, you also can get 15% off if you subscribe annually. Did you know that, Ben?
I did not, but that's a really good thing for you to do. And if you're trying to be a Patreon member,
Save some moolah. And then, guys, sponsored by G Fuel. If you didn't see the T-shirt, the best energy drink on the planet. Maybe I need to drink some more of it right now. I'm like really tired. We're doing a late episode tonight, but
yeah,
yeah, dude. Use G Fuel code Danny D for 20% off. Fuel your filmmaking sessions, whether you're up late at night editing, or maybe you're writing, or you're developing your idea, which we're gonna get back into right now. I'll get you some G Fuel. They're doing a bunch of horror collabs. I think I'm gonna. Speaking of the monthly giveaways, I have 2 tubs that I give away for tier 3 and 4 in the Patreon. Those are gonna be horror tubs this month. I think one of them's like the hack and slash Jason flavor, and then the other one I think is Dream Demon, that Nightmare on Elm Street one. So if you want to win some horror
interesting.
tubs, come join the Patreon or use code Danny D if you're just gonna get yourself some. You don't want to take the risk, but free stuff's cool, I guess. But anyways, then you
Uh,
want to
y-
talk about expanding the world of our
y-
idea?
yeah, sure. So like we kind of talked about a little bit of research, talking about like, you know, how to like kind of capture that idea and stay passionate about it. I think the next thing, kind of coinciding with that foundation of your idea of your why you want to do it and what exactly the, you know, hero goal obstacle is world building, and defining the rules of the world as sort of you see it, but also as your protagonists and all of them have to experience it. If you look at something like Harry Potter, you know, the rules of that world is very unique to, you know, newbies of magic, where you're kind of following the eyes of like a first year student getting to know this world of you're a wizard, Harry, from like having to understand it. And we're kind of the reason we root so well with Harry, Ron, and Hermione is because straight up their first years. And if you're starting watching Harry Potter, you're also a first year technically. And so you know what they know. You are one and the same with them. If you're following someone who's a vet, and not that, say like I don't know, Joel from The Last of Us and Last of Us Part One, like he looks like an expert who's 13 years later, like waking up in the apocalypse and has the ration cards and the weird girl named Tess and fucking all those things. Um, you know, it's going to be a little bit harder to understand the world, but it's maybe an intentional choice because you're more trying to focus on the character. I don't know, just define the rules. Is what I mean.
Yeah, make sure that you know you're not just if you're telling a story set in your hometown and all of a sudden you're in a building and we don't know where we are, like maybe explain like they're at the arcade that you go to all the time, you know? Like build the world and let us know like what's going on. What are these special details? Paint the picture for us so we don't get lost. Don't just assume that we know how the rules work in this world. Because then people are just going to get lost. And usually, when people feel lost, they lose interest. So that's not going to do you any favors. But
Mm-hmm.
world building is also about tone. It's about atmosphere. How does this world feel? What feelings is this supposed to evoke? It should all tie into your theme, or it doesn't have to, but a lot of people like to do that. You know, how do your characters fit into this environment? What makes them the person that you choose to tell this story through?
Mm-hmm. I agree, and that's also a really good setup for, you know, speaking of tone and atmosphere, it's visualization of your film is very important. And I don't think you should necessarily be afraid of leaning on comps for that. Meaning lean on, if you're making a sci-fi film and it's fucking futuristic and you want it to look beautiful, you should say loud and proud, I want it to look like Blade Runner 2049, but with a little bit of X-Files or a little bit of Harry Potter. Like that's cool. And you can see that that mashup, you know, hasn't necessarily been done before. And I think it will help you with your pitch either to your friends or even at a very high level to pitching the head of a studio. These people really want to hear things that make them feel safe, especially when there's people betting on your idea and you're trying to convince them to pay you for it or like buy your script or something like that. Saying things like it's a little bit of Blade Runner 2049, it's a little bit of Harry Potter, it's a little bit of Jaws, and a little bit of all that. Um, People are like excited by that because it's like, oh yeah, I know, and I like Jaws for that reason, and I like Blade Runner for that reason, and you'll know why those things are good because they speak to you. You can do this through mood boards, by the way, playlists, cinematic references, anything that kind of helps you communicate that vision. Pitch decks, I'm a big fan of, and having a good pitch deck or like a sort of booklet document is a really good demonstration. If you do a really good job at making it and it's like looks pretty, visually pleasing, fun to read, easy to send with a friend, that is a great way of demonstrating that you know your shit creatively, like just generally, without having even read your script. A pitch deck and having a good looking pitch deck is actually a large part of the reason I sold my first show to Sony. And it was because I knew they were not going to read my script, even though they did, and it was like fine, whatever. The real thing that they bought was the pitch deck because it looked nice and pretty, and it was better than all the other pitch decks they had internally, and I knew that because I had a really good graphic designer for that. And every single meeting I've had with them, they bring up 3 years later, this is not no bullshit. They always say, God, and you made that booklet, and they call it a packet or a booklet or a pitch deck. They change it every time, and they always compliment it. I'm like, guys, thank you, but it's been 3 fucking years. Uh,
Damn, I need
but
to see
anyway,
this pitch deck.
yeah, it's I'll send it to you. It's it's a helpful tool, believe it or not. Some people say you don't need it, but you don't need it if it's bad. If it's bad and you made it in like Microsoft Word or something and it's like by the skin of your teeth,
You give
yeah,
it
you
to
don't
me,
need
and
it.
it's just like it's a cover with the title, and then it's just one page. Please make my show. They're
Yeah.
just like, what a genius idea.
Yeah, it's also just easy to digest, man. People like pictures. People
A
like coloring
huge
books.
fan of I mean, obviously, most of the ideas that I'm pitching nowadays, it's to like local producers and stuff. So it's not like I'm pitching to Sony like Ben over here, but I'm still trying to help them understand why it's unique and why I'm trying to bring them on board. And playlists are a huge part of that for me. I like to send them a playlist and be like, here's what the score is going to feel like. This is what the tone and atmosphere is, and then they ask questions like, okay, so how does this music fit in? And then I'm like, it's a horror movie, so think about how we're gonna go from hearing this kind of music to just like eerie quietness, and now it's dead quiet in the house, and you're like, oh shit, it's nighttime. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
setting the tone there, and use all the tools that you have and that you know how to use at your disposal. There are no rules when you're trying to get somebody to green light your idea or come on board or help you make it happen. Whatever you got to do to help them see your vision.
Do you want to talk about outlining?
Yeah, yeah. And let's see here. Sorry, I lost my spot here. Okay. Yeah. So taking it from idea to outline. So basically what Ben and I have been talking about, and Ben, you can elaborate on this if you know how you do it differently. But what I'm talking about is, okay, you have an idea, you're writing it down, maybe you're typing it in a Google Doc, and then you're coming up with a log line and you're starting to set the rules for your world. You're giving bullet points, you're making notes. Maybe you're grouping the notes together. You're saying, okay, this is everything about the setting. Here's everything about my main character. Here's everything about the inciting incident. All these things, you can break it down however micro lens you want to get it, or however macro lens you want to get it. I think it's just really important to get the idea onto paper, because to me it's like when it's in my head I can't develop it because it needs to be out to where I can like
Mm-hmm.
start molding it right in front of me on a physical screen.
Mm-hmm.
um and I call it a dream sheet. I don't know if you call it anything different, but it's just like I have a dream sheet and it's got all the things that I'm you know molding here, and then once it feels like I've gotten a good grasp on what my concept is and how I'm doing this, it's time to test if it actually works by making like a synopsis, or maybe a really detailed summary.
I love that dream sheet. I've never heard of that before. Did you come up with that?
I don't know if the Duffer Brothers called it blue skying. Have you ever heard it like that?
Yeah. Yeah. I like
I call
dream
it I
sheets.
call it a dream sheet. I'm
That's
sure I heard
beautiful.
somebody else say that too, but I mean that's what it is, right? You're like dreaming this idea,
Yeah.
and then you're keep
Dream
dr-
sheet.
you you keep dreaming about it, so you just keep putting the ideas on paper until you're like, dude, I've got
Yeah.
enough for a movie here.
I
Let's
love
start.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that to death. I agree. I think the way I always put it is like I narrow it down to three things. So first of all, for actual outline, like for practical use, I use Microsoft OneNote because it's in the cloud and I can put it on my fucking desktop and it immediately goes to my phone, my iPad, my laptop, everywhere. And it's all in the cloud. I've had this thing since I think 10 years now. I've been running on OneNote and it's my most valuable asset. But within that, you can make like sections, and then you could like make sections within your sections, and then also sections within those. So it's like very, very, or if you're like an organization freak, you can do that. But I would narrow down a simple outlining process to three things, which is that first thing, the dream sheet. I didn't have a name for it. I would just call it like your general idea sheet. Well, technically, I'd say four things. So I have one page. It's like an ideas page, and it's just like I strike down all ideas on there. For like, and I've been doing that again for 10 years. I have 10 years worth of ideas just in this long ass bulletproof thing. It goes infinite. And anytime I have just a general idea, I guess that what if scenario, I'm like, I write it down there and I say, hey, this thing happened, and I would be curious if I could do this, and that. And then if I ever think about that idea again, I will do an indentation on that bullet point and I'll say, and then on that thing, it would be cool if it also did this. And then if I do it again, I'll do like another and another until I'm like realizing this is a lot of indentations on this one idea. This must be good. Am I willing to commit to this? Then you make a dream sheet, where I think, like Derek said, yeah, you just put everything you want into this, why you're making this, what you want to get out of this, who is this for, what are your goals with this? Like, get as detailed as you can, about everything you need to get detailed about, whether it's for you, whether it's for the characters and all that stuff. After that, I think you need two more things, which is an ideas page specifically to to this movie and this project. An assignment I had in film school was called "Write 10 Mad Ideas" for your big idea you want to make a movie out of. And when I did that, I was like on a momentum by like number 5 or 6, and I was like, God, I could keep going. And I went after 10. And then I started using this method of let me just write mad ideas, and I have this ongoing mad ideas section in my OneNote, that throughout my entire writing process, I'm constantly adding there. If I'm writing a feature, it usually ends up about 75 to 120 mad ideas by the end of it. If I'm writing a pilot, it's about 50 to 70, and it just all depends. If it's a short, I'll end up about like 20 to 30. And then the third one is your beat sheet. Obviously, a beat sheet is more like a scene by scene thing. It's like a roadmap, all your major story moments, all your scenes in order. And you don't have to like really flesh that out if you don't want to. You could do dialogue if you wanted, but if it's also just like important things in certain parts, someone needs to say this out loud or declare this, then obviously put that. But again, it's all what makes you feel best, and how you're gonna fucking format this for yourself, and what makes you write the screenplay the best, because that's the thing that everyone's gonna read. No one's gonna read your outline, no one's gonna read your fucking anything else. It's just down to the script. And whatever it takes for you to make that perfect, which is a whole art in itself, do that. But that's my process on that.
Yeah, well, it's never going to be perfect, but we
Right.
strive for that.
Right. Yes.
So yeah, it, I am messy during this process. Like I don't think that I would get as much done if I kept stopping and fixing every typo and going, this needs to go right here. If it's that simple, I'll do it. But I'm not like scrolling all the way up and down, like trying to like make everything perfect. It's like, okay, I just need to know that I've got all the ideas here. I'm not going to forget about these things. I've made sure every little nugget that I found, I collected them and I put them on here so I can always reference it when I'm outlining.
Mm-hmm.
It can be anything. I mean, Ben was saying, you were talking about like a beat sheet, right? Like we're getting it all onto like a beat sheet. And so I mean, I'll put snippets of dialogue in there if it feels really important. You can go however far or however little you want, whatever you think is good enough as a launching pad to get you going for your outline. But, you can figure out what you want your audience to feel. I think that's the most important thing before you really start to break ground on an outline is knowing, what you got to know, like, what's the beginning, what's the end, what's the
Mm-hmm.
midpoint, things like that, so that you have your roadmap and you're not going to get lost in the weeds because you can very easily go off on a tangent and then you end up with a 200-page script and you're just going to have to start chopping it down, and that's just going to suck because it feels like you came up with all this stuff and now you have to get rid of a bunch of it. So knowing where you're going to go with everything early on is going to save you a lot of headache
Yeah,
when
you're
you
exactly
hit
right.
later.
Exactly right. Because you find that you'll have the goalposts will move back, I think, in the creative process of like, I just want to make a movie. And then suddenly the goal is like, I want to make this scene in this movie. And I think that's what's the most important thing in your outline is if you can narrow it down at the very least, the beginning, the middle, and an end that are undeniable scenes that are your knockouts. You need to use those as milestones to get you through the in-betweens and stuff like that. And sometimes your in-betweens will also be knockout moments as well. But like having making the reason you're doing this so that you could do that epic midpoint scene or that epic climax or that epic fucking opening scene that you always wanted to do, like that's that's very fucking crucial. You'll also realize too, if you can't do that, which is also okay, if this movie is only just as good as your, one or two big scenes, perhaps it's not worth writing it, either as a feature or like in the format that way you are, or like writing in general. Maybe it's just a cool idea that you can pitch to somebody else, and maybe you need help or something. But yeah.
Or maybe it's too much for a movie and you're like, this just needs to be a TV show, and that's a whole nother field there, kind of like a subsection of what we're talking about here. We're mainly talking about films, but you know, um you'll know pretty quickly if you're ready to start writing, or it feels like it still needs more time and you yourself have a lot of questions or things aren't making sense, because you don't want to lose your audience because you yourself don't know what you're writing. That's a really bad position to be in. And I've totally started writing something, especially really early on when I didn't know how to use this process. Where I started writing something and I got like 5 pages in, and I'm like, something feels off here. I don't have a plan. I don't know where I'm going here. I know I want to get to this point, but I haven't figured out the in between, and so it just feels like it's falling apart right away.
Hmm,
So you're just
definitely.
constantly testing to see if your idea floats, and once it does, it's off to the races. You can start outlining, and then you write a script if that's what you want to do. If you're the writer, you're going to write this script, and then look at that. Boom, that's development. That's what we talked about during our 3 stages of filmmaking, the development process. We just kind of broke it down here on a very basic, simple walkthrough, of how we kind of do it. And I live in this world like almost 24/7. So I
Yeah.
apologize if maybe you got questions because you're like, he said something we didn't really like, go into depth on it. Ask us. There's also the comment section right there. We have mentioned comments on the show before because people, comment something and it's either something really nice, or if you comment a question, I will bring it up and answer your question here on the air. We also have the Patreon um, tier. Which tier is it? I think it's tier 2. You get to ask a question for our monthly Q&A episode, which we should be doing here soon. So yeah, if there's anything you can think of that didn't make sense here and you want us to elaborate, whether it was myself or Ben, feel free to ask a question or join our Discord and be like, "Yo, I don't get this." And I'll be like, "Oh, I got you." You know, there's many ways to interact with us, but yeah, that's basically development in a nutshell. I mean, we did a whole episode on how to write a screenplay. So if you work through this process and you're like, okay, I've got my outline, which is, I mean, you can look up online, you know, um, just a basic story outline, and you can again go as macro or micro as you want with it. You can, but there's stories of people like James Cameron writing like a 30-page outline for whatever freaking movie he's making. Um, so you can go that far, or it can be 5 pages. Whatever gets the point across and makes you feel confident and makes other people feel confident in your
Definitely.
vision. Um, yeah, I think that pretty much sums up developing an idea. You got anything else you want to say about it, Ben?
I mean, I don't know. You just got to lead with passion. It's always what it's going
Hell
to come
yeah.
down to. And if you don't love what you're doing, if you hate the idea, like it's okay to stop. And you have to love it for forever. You can never give up on it. Even when it's hard, even when you're like on the set and people don't love it as much as you do, which is going to happen. And you're like faced with endless amount of people who don't love it as much as you do. It's just a test of will. Um, And I think once you've made that idea that's like really good and you've proven everyone wrong that your idea was worth making, and people are now perpetually excited about whatever idea you have, like that's that's amazing. You like the fact that Chris Nolan, just by name and whatever film he wants to make, like his ideas are in a way infallible because he's earned that right, but it wouldn't have happened had he not took those weekends that he did to make Following and all those like early works that he did. I'm sure he was kicking and screaming with people like not giving a fuck about his first feature and about his first projects, and he was him against everybody else, and it was a test of will. And I think that's what we always have to remember. um early on is that test of will get you to prove everyone wrong, and you'll never have to do it again. And people will be so excited to do whatever the hell it is you say because you've earned the trust, But it's
Yeah, I
always
mean,
it's always a
it
journey.
it's like we say, the thing with films and stories, that we see on the screen, whatever format it is, they all started with an idea that somebody had the passion to move forward and just will into existence. So if it feels like it's just not happening and you have a great idea, you're not pushing hard enough. You're not pitching to enough people. You're not getting it out there. Maybe you are like, I can't write a script. I don't want to write a script, but I have an idea and I want to act in it, or I want to direct it, or I want to produce something, or I don't know. Maybe you're a weirdo and you're like, I want to light a movie. So I'm gonna come up with an idea. I don't know.
I want to
Whatever.
light a movie.
I just want to play with the lights.
That's
That
sweet.
would be
I'm
a
sure that's
really
happened many a time,
somebody's like,
actually.
hey, that's me. you know? But
Yeah.
whatever it is, anybody could do this part of it 100%. I think you take it as far as you can. If you can't outline, it stumps you. It's not something you're good at. Take it to a writer. Most writers who are going to do a good job are going to want probably some kind of credit or payment, or maybe it is like your Uncle Jeff who wrote a book once and might be able to write a screenplay, whoever it is, uh, develop your idea and make it something that you can explain and other people can understand. And after that, the sky's the limit. Anyways, I think our next episode is going to be how to choose your next film project. I find myself have several times now throughout, like the 5 years that I've been doing this, getting stuck trying to figure out which one to act on. Maybe I have ideas and
Mm.
they're all developed to an outline, and I don't know which one is the one to write and turn into a script. So I think we're going to do kind of a small episode on that. Probably be a little more casual than this one because it's really just about learning which one feels right. So, but that will be really fun because I'm very passionate about that part of it. I think an idea has to really mean something and feel like it's the one, and you won't know until you get that feeling. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I guess lately have always kind of made that decision based on like career and optics and like kind of a means to an end and what's immediately like going to create the most momentum for me. So that way I can make another idea that I'm more passionate about that I maybe can't as easily sell or convince someone to believe in. But yeah, there's a lot we can go into. I think like career motivations or not, there's a lot to discuss. So
So many different ways to approach it, like everything else we discuss in these episodes. But Ben, before we say goodbye, is there something interesting that's happened since the last episode?
uh maybe, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's been an up and down kind of week. I I enjoyed Battlefield 6 for the time that I played it. Um, really hoping that Battle Royale is good. Uh, I
Does
don't
that
know,
come out?
man. Battle Royale, we don't know yet.
There's
It
no
might be a
date.
surprise drop, but they
What if
are
it's
testing it.
canceled? I'm just kidding. They're like,
God,
we
no.
changed our mind. Everybody, whoa,
It'd
we're
be
funding.
horrible.
Is
So
it? It's not going to
horrible.
be free though, right?
I supposedly is. It's
Oh,
supposed to be
really?
like the true Warzone killer, but
Wow.
um,
Then maybe I'll play that because I don't know if I'm going to buy Battlefield 6.
yeah, it's
I
okay.
started playing Red Dead Redemption last night. Finally,
That's cool. The first
played
one
for
or
like
second
2
one?
hours. First one on PC though, with like ultra graphics and
Cool.
uncapped frame rate and stuff. So it's fun. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's
I
beautiful.
uh I lost all my chips playing poker, so I shot the guy and took my stuff back. But
Hmm.
I
That's fun.
uh yeah, no, I'm playing that. You can't really see it. I mean, you might be able to see like a ladder or something right there, a step stool. But we were just painting this wall to my left gray for my audition background. I wanted it to not just be like a white wall. It's like ugly. But now my wife's like, let's just paint the whole office. And I'm like, oh, it's so much work. But all right, if we're gonna do it, might as well do it now. So next time my backdrop might be gray. But so things
That's
might
cool.
change a little bit. But that's I'm looking forward to doing that, I guess. Anything you're looking forward to?
Derek and I made a lot of progress on our script that we're working on. I'm excited to finish that ASAP and get to the final scene. We were almost there, and I'm looking forward to keep chugging along the screenplay for my game. I've been slacking on it like crazy, but I had a really great breakthrough idea today. I figured out what the menu screen is going to be. And I'm
Nice.
very, very specific about what that's going to be because I wanted it to be as impactful as The Last of Us Part Two's menu screen. Because it's one of those
Oh.
things where it's like, it's one of those things where it's like an image that you don't understand why the hell that's the image, but it's cool and you'll deal with it. And then when you reach that moment in the game where that image from like, oh, that's from the menu screen. Oh, that's why it's the menu screen. It's so satisfying. And then when you
That is
finish the
cool.
game, it gives you a different menu screen that means something new and it's like
Oh,
redemption. And so for me, I was like, I really want to do that too. And
that's
I've been
cool.
fucking banging my head against the wall. I finally figured it out today and it's really unique and I'm really happy with it. And I really hope it sticks. But
See,
yeah.
guys, you wanna come up with a good video game idea? This is your competition, man. This guy's over here thinking about menu screens. You gotta take
Yeah.
that shit to the next level. You want it to stand out.
It's a debut, man. I gotta make it count. I gotta make a good first
Yeah.
impression.
Yeah, I started rewriting around midnight for my second draft. I'm like 11 pages in, so looking forward to
Wonderful.
cracking at that some more. It feels like I'm fleshing that out even more. It just continues to get fleshed out, guys. From initial spark to the day you shoot it, and then you still are molding it when you go and edit it. So it's a never ending process. It feels like it does end, and it'll be done eventually. But until then, it feels like you're constantly, you know, testing it again and again to see if it floats or it floats better or it floats longer. But yeah, until this next one. As always, I'm Derek Bowder,
Ben Escobar.
and this is the Fellowship of the Script. Thanks for joining us. And until the next one, keep creating, keep pushing, and keep telling stories that matter.